tight as the polls are, it feels like Donald Trump will win. After all, why else would the left-wing media call him Hitler? Why else would MSNBC shamelessly intersperse footage of the 1939 Nazi rally at Madison Square Garden with Trump's Sunday MSG event, overflowing with middle and working-class voters in effect, calling those voters Nazis? Why else would the New York Times plaster the front page of its Sunday op-ed section with huge block type, font size otherwise reserved for the outbreak of world wars, to what Trump will do if he wins, including use soldiers against citizens? Not to mention the furor over the refusal by both the LA Times and Washington Post, owned by Amazon's Jeff Bezos, to endorse either candidate, which sent the left into a tizzy of canceled subscriptions and social media virtue signaling. Author Stephen King, after 5 years, "I have canceled my subscription to the Washington Post," a statement King posted on X, which happens to be owned by another Trump-supporting billionaire. The left can't win for trying. Yes, even WAPO, none too subtle motto, democracy dies in darkness, born after Trump's 2016 victory, has perhaps rethought the stakes. What does it say when two of America's largest left-leaning newspapers can't, or won't, endorse Kamala Harris over Trump? A man we are told is an irredeemable racist, sexist, xenophobe who poses a threat unlike any we have ever confronted. Here's exactly what it says: billionaire businessmen know a loser when they see one. This weekend, Harris was the subject of a lengthy New York Times profile, informed by 100 friends and colleagues who also seemed incapable of offering a full-throated endorsement. In particular, they noted that she was not a gifted student in law school, and that her 2019 presidential run revealed a person for whom politics did not come naturally. She struggled to define herself ideologically, as she still does, a struggle that's excruciating to watch. But of course, this NYT's, the world according to Kamala Harris, argued that as a woman of color, everything has been harder for Kamala Harris. Excuse me? Let's get real. Identity politics might be the only reason this unimpressive, unintellectual queen of word salad has risen far above her capabilities to potentially become president of the United States. As Kamala would say, let's understand how we got here. During a 2020 presidential debate, Joe Biden got backed into promising a female running mate, and Harris, who had all but called Biden a racist during her own failed campaign, was right there, willing to forgive and forget, if not acknowledge that she never believed what she'd said in the first place. Jill Biden has reportedly never forgiven her. Does anyone really think that she and Joe, still smarting over his forced ouster, want Harris to win? The Bidens, the billionaire class, and rational voters everywhere all know that Trump isn't going to unleash the military on U.S. citizens or be a dictator on day one, or prosecute his political enemies. Hell, Trump even said he'd consider pardoning Hunter Biden if elected. I wouldn't take it off the books, Trump told radio host Hugh Hewitt last week. Unlike Joe Biden, despite what they've done to me, where they've gone after me so viciously. I happen to think it's very bad for our country. Look at that. If only the left-leaning media would amplify that message. Instead, we got Michelle Obama stumping for Harris over the weekend, remonstrating the crowd, much as her husband has been unsuccessfully doing to blackmail voters. "I hope you'll forgive me," Michelle said in Kalamazoo, Michigan on Saturday, "if I'm a little frustrated that some of us are choosing to ignore Donald Trump's gross incompetence while asking Kamala to dazzle us at every turn." Dazzle us? At this point, we're just looking for a coherent, specific answer to any question. Just one. But in Michelle's telling, voters who are concerned about the border crisis, rising crime, the affordable housing shortage, and a Middle East on fire just need to lower their expectations. We pick apart Kamala's answers from interviews that Trump doesn't even have the courage to do, she continued. Please. Trump sat down for 3 hours with Joe Rogan last week, an appearance that has already racked up over 34 million views on YouTube alone. And this billionaire spoke the lingua franca of his working-class supporters, MMA fighters, what he learned about UFOs, and his sheer awe at moving into the White House and standing in the Lincoln bedroom. Trump also noted that, unlike Harris, he can speak discursively before circling back to his initial thought, what he calls the weave. The vice president, he said, couldn't put two sentences together. That is some plain-spoken truth. It certainly lands better than hysterical cries of fascism. Harris has an open invite to do Rogan's show, but she won't, because she can't speak that for long, that extemporaneously, and everyone knows it. She didn't have the guts to show up at the Al Smith charity dinner earlier this month, as presidential candidates of every party save Walter Mondale in 1984 historically have done. Even Trump and Hillary appeared together in 2016, and that was at the height of Lock Her Up. This year, comedian and host Jim Gaffigan spoke for the polls and power brokers in that room. Why is Vice President Harris not here? I mean, this is a room full of Catholics and Jews in New York City. This is a layup for the Democratic nominee. Even Kamala's own events aren't about her anymore. Last week's campaign headlines were dominated by Bruce Springsteen and Beyoncé, who finally appeared at a rally to endorse but did not perform again. Have we heard anything new, from Kamala herself? Or anything that sounds honest? She has never really answered to what she knew and when about President Biden's cognitive decline. Nor could she answer a simple question at CNN's town hall last week about the one piece of dream legislation she'd love to pass. To the poli-sci professor named Carol, who had dared to ask, "We got this well. There's not just one. I have to be honest with you, Carol. There's a lot of work that needs to happen, but let's I think that may be part of this. The point that how I think about it is, we've got to get past this era of politics and partisan politics slowing down what we need to do in terms of progress in our country. Yet, per the Obamas, the fault is ours for not abiding this inanity." And of course, Kamala has not been asked once about her husband, Doug, whose ex-girlfriend has accused him of slapping her in the face so hard she spun around in public, outside an Enlist gala, and of impregnating the nanny during his first marriage. Instead, Harris gets to return, over and over again, to her assertion that she is a protector of girls and women, a claim much of the mainstream media happily promotes. Truly, this is an election between the out-of-touch elites and the everyman, but only one is speaking clearly.